Okay. So, um, sorry about the quality of the video. Sorry about um, quality of me. um, you're not getting my best version, unfortunately, not right now. But I wanted to get some ideas and thoughts out of my head. So, basically, new film Alien Romulus just dropped, which was fantastic. I really liked the Alien Romulus, really deep cut. Um, the alien baby, the offspring. In my opinion, he's Romulus, and even though the director said that the Alien 4 movie wasn't a direct inspiration for anything, um, I believe that the Alien hybrid, in the Alien 4 was Remus. You know, that's what he's alluding to, Romulus and Remus, the Raised by Wolves, Ridley Scott. You know, seminal um, TV show that came out. So the Raised by Wolves. Um, so I thought it was really good. Uh, and then I've just been kind of like falling back into the mythology of Prometheus and the Greek mythologies because I just find it fascinating. There's this new series called Chaos with Jeff Goldblum, which I really love. I think is probably one of the most accurate depictions of how the Greek gods were depicted in the mythologies as I can remember, like from the stories and the mythologies of the gods. They're definitely accurate portrayals of how the gods behave. Not everything's accurate. For example, like they said that Poseidon is Zeus's younger brother. That's not true. Zeus is the youngest brother. He's the last one to be born, um, and he's the first one to be saved. So his brothers are older than him. Hades is the middle child, and his sisters are born before him, so they're all older than him. So I love the series Chaos. I think it's really good. I'm really looking forward to season 2 of that. So obviously, everything sort of reverts back to Prometheus, which the director said that he wanted to specifically tie into the alien mythos that make canon the Ridley Scott film Prometheus, which I agree with. And I've been seeing a lot of speculations about the engineers, Prometheus, and all of this, and I wanted to tie it into the Anunnaki myths of the Sumerian religions as well, because Prometheus in the Greek myth has one task. Him and his brother Epimetheus have a task to create a species to worship the gods. So they create humans. Well, Zeus says to seed the world with life. Epimetheus creates all the animals, but then he leaves humans without gifts to protect themselves. And so Prometheus gives them fire. And Zeus is initially a bit distraught at the idea that humans should be given fire of the gods because it might be a threat to the gods. But Prometheus assures him that's not going to happen. So how that parallels the kind of story of Enki and Enlil in the Sumerian text is that when when Enlil, so either Enki and Enlil are Prometheus and Epimetheus, Enki and Enlil. Enki creates the Igigi as slaves to create to mine this gold, and then Enki says this is, an abomination, and he tries to wipe them out. So maybe Enki is Zeus and Enlil is Prometheus, but the parallel is there, whereby this story is repeated several times. So in the Old Testament, Yahweh destroys the Tower of Babel, but so he does that because they're trying to build a tower to the heavens, and Yahweh destroys it. In the Greek myth, after Prometheus gives humans fire, they stop worshipping the gods, and so they start to build this kind of temple that is a worship for something else. So Zeus wipes them out. And in the Sumerian texts, it's Enki and Enlil, and then there's a third character who I cannot remember off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up again. But he's like like Enki and Enlil are the sort of, well, they're there specifically to mine the gold, while all the other Anunnaki are supposed to be in Nibiru, and the king of Nibiru, the king of the Anunnaki, finds out this war between Enki and Enlil. So that's why I'm kind of saying Enki and Enlil are Prometheus and Epimetheus, because Enki's folly of creating the Igigi led Enki to having to interfere. And in the Prometheus story, Prometheus has to interfere with human beings to give them the gift of fire, to give them some kind of like ability to exist in the universe, or the world that they've created. Because Epimetheus doesn't give them any gifts to protect themselves. So, they create this slave race, the Igigi. They create the Igigi. The Igigi are already slaves. That's what it is. The Igigi are already slaves to the Anunnaki. They use the Igigi. They splice the Igigi with the animals of Earth, and humans are created from it. So, yeah, I've got it wrong, but I'm just kind of doing this off memory because I can't really. I should probably write a script or something, but I'm not really there yet. I'm just kind of unloading ideas. But so this obviously parallels with the Yahweh and the devil myth as well. The Tower of Babel. God sends a flood to destroy the human beings. He sends a flood to destroy Tower of Babel. In the Prometheus story, he sends a flood to destroy human beings, and Prometheus warns his children. He has 2 children, and he warns them that this flood is coming. And so when the humans are wiped out, Prometheus's children survive, and then he tells them to use stones to chuck them behind his shoulder, and they become the new man. And when Zeus finds out about that betrayal, because he defies Zeus once by giving fire to human beings. Then they build this tower. Zeus wipes it out, and Prometheus steals fire from the gods, and he gives it back to humans. And the third time, Zeus wipes them out. There's Pandora as well. Pandora's box is used. In so this is confusing at this point because there's a tangent here. But let me just get to the point I was making first. But so Epimetheus I mean, Prometheus is then, told, I'm going to wipe humans out. You've given fire to the humans twice now. The second time they've opened Pandora's box. So in the film, the Pandora's box is the black goo, the mutagenic black goo. In the Sumerian texts, it's the direct technological, biological creation of the human beings and the direct intervention of the Anunnaki to mutate the life on Earth into these humans that are going to be used for slavery, essentially. So humans were born into slavery, and so then after Prometheus saves humankind by warning them in the Sumerian text, this happens. I can't remember his name, but he sends a flood, he wipes them out, and Enki warns his son by talking through a papyrus wall or something along those lines, a wall of reeds. And so, because of that, he warns them that this flood is coming, and they're saved. That's when, the third betrayal. That's when Zeus punishes Prometheus by chaining him to the mountain, because he's betrayed him 3 times essentially. The first time he's been betrayed is not really a betrayal, because giving fire to humans to worship the gods made sense. The fact that they stopped worshipping the gods was the reason why Zeus removed the fire. The first real betrayal was stealing fire and giving it back to the human beings. But the reason why he was punished was because after that, he was told, don't save the humans. You're not allowed to save the humans. They're going to be wiped out. But he defies Zeus's orders directly and saves humans. And so Prometheus's hubris is punished because he directly opposes Zeus's rule. The first time he doesn't really oppose Zeus's rule. The second time, he's not really stealing fire from the gods. He is a god, so he doesn't steal anything that belongs to him already. The third thing is he actually does directly oppose Zeus's law, basically. So he's punished by being chained to the mountain. In the Sumerian text, it happens when the flood happens. The children of the Anunnaki who live on Earth are not capable of being able to live on Nibiru, because the effects of the radiation on Earth and the sun mean that they couldn't survive in space on Nibiru, so they're forced to live on Earth. But then when so they say that Enlil was the king of the Anunnaki, but I'm scared. I don't know too much about the history. I have read it. Anu, that's his name, Anu. So yeah, Enlil was Enki's brother. So Enlil was Enki's brother, and Enki was responsible for looking after the the mining of the gold, and Enlil goes behind Enki's back, and there's a war between them. Anu is the king on Nibiru, so Anu is the Zeus character. So the ancient Egyptian mythology is Osiris and Set, and then in the modern texts of the Arabian Peninsula, it's Yahweh and Satan and Lucifer, or Satan, and in the Bhagavad Gita is Krishna, and the war of the Pandavas versus the Kauravas. So there's like this, ultimate battle between, in the Bhagavad Gita is, who is it now? Is Krishna is the, the supreme godhead, but then there's, Ashwathama is the champion of the Kauravas, and then the champion of the, um, Pandavas was Aaron, or Arjun, Aaron or Arjun, however you want to pronounce it. And so Aaron and Ashwathama. So Ashwathama and Aaron, or Arjuna, they're Enki and Enlil, and Krishna is a Zeus character. So is this mythology of war in heaven between the king of the gods, two of his right hand men who were brothers, because the Pandavas and the Kauravas were cousins, but Arjuna and Ashwathama were supposed to be related as well, and the Kauravas and the Pandavas were supposed to be related. And then you have Enki and Enlil, Osiris and Set, and later on, after, and then you have Anu, Enki and Enlil. You have Osiris, Set, and Horus, and then you have Yahweh, Lucifer, and the third part of that is always an obscured, because this is where the problem with the Arabian monotheistic kind of like dissolution of the Sumerian texts, whereby they the Abrahamic religions kind of got rid of the whole concept of there being a pantheon of gods for just worshipping one god, because I guess ultimately there's only one Zeus, really, one Krishna, one god type thing. And yes, it's kind of it's a bit, so that they have a duality, but they don't really have the triarch of this, like, that's the Great Flood is Noah, and all of that. You have the Atlantis story of the Great Flood. But yeah, I mean, the Prometheus story, the alien Romulus, I think is really, it kind of, it with Prometheus, the original film. I always kind of had the concept that maybe Prometheus was the original engineer on the film, on the planet, who drinks the black goo and then crumbles to dust. That's Prometheus, because he has no forethought. Prometheus means afterthought. So he in the Greek pantheon, in the Greek mythology, Prometheus rushes ahead and creates all of these animals and things, but he doesn't give any humans the capability of being able to survive in the galaxy, right? So he drinks the black goo and he turns to DNA, and then it cuts to however many 100,000 years later, after human beings are created, and you've got these maps on the wall, and they're all flying to space. When they wake up the engineer on the spaceship, that's Prometheus, and he's not coming to destroy Earth. He's coming to give the gift of fire to humans. He's taking the black goo, he's taking the mutagen, and he's going to take it to Earth, and he's going to mutate the human beings there, so that they have the capabilities that he has as a god of being able to survive in the wilderness of space. Then there's an outbreak. And so far in my thoughts and my ramblings, I kept on thinking, oh, that's quite a good theory. But then I thought, hold on, the mural is of an alien type figure, and he looks like he's chained to the wall. And I was like, hold on a second, is he supposed to be Prometheus? Like, in the Prometheus myth, Prometheus is punished by being chained to the wall of Olympus, the mountain of Olympus. He's chained to the mountain of Olympus, and an eagle rips his liver out every day. Well, this mural on the wall looks like someone who's chained to the wall, and he's chained to the wall in black goo. So he's like, hold on, is that Prometheus? Is Ridley Scott kind of alluding to the idea that this is the real Prometheus, the god, this Xeno that's mural on the wall that depicts the Prometheus of giving fire, being punished for giving fire to humans. And then my thoughts get really confusing, because I'm like, if that's Prometheus, then maybe the engineer that woke up is Zeus, or maybe the engineer that woke up is another god from the pantheon of gods, or maybe the engineer is one of the Igigi, like one of these slave creatures that the Anunnaki used as workers who are functionally immortal. Like how the Sumerian texts depict the Igigi as being these kinds of like single sort of skinned, amorphous type, grey looking workers, basically human like, 2 arms, 2 legs, but like grey skin, big eyes, no mouth. They communicated telepathically, and they were functionally immortal. But the thing is, the Igigi were difficult to grow, so that was why Enlil went against Anu's wishes and Enki, by creating humans, because humans were easier to grow. So I was like, hold on a second. Is the engineer, are the engineers the Igigi? Like, is the mural Enlil? Like, is Prometheus the mural? Is the black goo the fire of the gods? Is Prometheus depicted in the mural, and are the engineers just workers for the gods, like the workforce of the gods? And then I started to think that's a really good theory, actually, because the Prometheus story isn't necessarily about being like not helping humans. Like Zeus is, so in the Titanomachy, so this is the important part. In the Titanomachy, this is the weird tangent that I was going to go off on earlier, but I kind of, so in the Titanomachy, Zeus's role is of a conqueror. He's trying to depose the emperor, and he succeeds. It's not really we're not really told how, but the Titanomachy is just this kind of like epic story of this, son of the emperor who rises up to take his place. Kronos is obviously the god of time, right? And under Kronos, the world was supposed to be essentially perfect. which people kind of dislike to admit in Greek kind of philosophy, because Kronos is sort of seen as this, like his father Uranus is seen as this demonic kind of figure. He's seen as death. He's seen as he's a bad guy, basically. You know, he beats his wife. He locks her in a dungeon. Tries to kill his children, and that's all true in as far as the Titanomachy comes to. But the depiction of the world before Zeus took over was that Zeus had created the men of gold, and the men of gold were supposed to be perfect in every way, and that he had created this perfect utopia for the gods, where the men of gold worship the gods unequivocally. They always worshipped the gods. They always gave succor to the gods. They never questioned anything, and the gods were happy because they got worshipped. They were worshipped as gods. But when Zeus destroys Kronos, he destroys the men of gold, or he destroys the ability to create the men of gold. And so the men of gold end up dying. In Titanomachy, it's that Gaia covers them over with the earth or something like this. Just basically, they're dead. So the first iteration after the men of gold were the men of silver, but they took too long to become. They were failed. They were failed humans. Well, they were failed men of gold, basically. The men of silver took too long to grow, so they took 100 years to mature, and then yeah, it's very specific as well, like with the time frames. By the time they were mature, they were not capable of being able to worship or work for the gods, and so they were ultimately discarded as a failed project. Now, the engineers are silver like skin. So, in the story, the engineers are the men of silver, the second men to be made after the men of gold had been, died out. After Kronos' men of gold had died out, the replacement were the men of silver. They were originally made, but they were a failed project. And this is where it starts to make sense that the engineers in the film, they're not anything to do with Prometheus. I mean, they're not they're not Prometheus. The engineers drinking the goo, they're not Prometheus. They're the men of silver that Prometheus first helped create with the help of Zeus, using the fire of the gods. And so the engineers waking up, their their species has essentially been earmarked for destruction already by Zeus as being a failed project. Human beings are Prometheus's success. He's very proud of human beings, and Zeus is at first initially very proud of human beings. He's very happy with them. They create temples to the gods. They worship the gods, and he's very happy with the gods. But with the fire of the gods, they become unruly and like unable to be controlled by Zeus. So yeah, the men of silver are wiped out, and in the film, David wipes out the engineers, and they're all silver skinned. They're the failed. They're the failed second race. So for me, I like that Ridley could be alluding to those deeper themes, because it means Kronos, Zeus, other pantheons gods, they exist, and their technology would be similar to the kind of technology that the engineers had, maybe different. And it does open up the universe for a wider stories, different stories. It could, like, it could definitely open up the idea to being the idea that the men of gold might still be out there. That would be interesting to find, like to find the original Kronos, um, like an ancient ruin of Kronos's destroyed empire or something like that would be really interesting, because you have relics from the men of silver, but they're not the gods. They're the men. They're the workers of the gods. They're the Agigi. They're the immortal slave race that the gods used to create their giant weapons of mass destruction and mine all of their gold and things like this. They're Prometheus's and Zeus's first failure, and it's arguable that um, there are no more engineers in the universe because they've all been wiped out, and those were the last ones alive that got wiped out by David. Um, and I just really like the idea that those themes could be definitely explored, and with the idea of Romulus and Remus being explored in the new films, I just really like the concept that you could definitely bring more Roman, Greek mythology into the universe quite easily, especially with Ridley's series Raised by Wolves. He definitely knows about his ancient gods, Odin, Zeus. It would be really interesting to have people create not necessarily, because we don't see Prometheus. If I'm right about Prometheus being the mural, because he in the end of Alien Romulus, Rook looks at the ceiling, and Big Chap is kind of hanging from the ceiling, and he's kind of hanging in the same way that the mural was hanging, like he melted through the ship and he died hanging there. And how I feel about these interdimensional beings, the gods and stuff like this, that Prometheus is nailed to the wall as a punishment. And the mural is very real. It almost looks like it's solidified black goo. It almost looks like it could start moving at any point. And when the black goo starts moving, I was very almost sure that the black goo of the mural was going to start moving, and he was going to come out of the mural at one point. But it kind of just stuck there, static, like Prometheus. Prometheus is stuck to the mountain, and he can't move. But he's very visceral. He's very there. You can see him, and it's, oh wow, cool. That could be really good if later on we find out that, you know when the I'm going to start calling them the men of silver, or the engineers, when he gets the trilobite impregnates him, and the deacon is born. That deacon looks very similar to the mural, and so I was like, well, maybe this whole Prometheus, the black goo, is the reason why he's stuck in this wall, is because for the gods it's still fire, but because gods the gods and the fire are immortal, he's stuck there because he's immortal, and he's static there because he's an interdimensional being of some kind, and that this is how the gods have been able to genetically mutate biological life on planets across the universe for millennia. And what we're seeing is we're seeing Prometheus chained to the wall of Mount Olympus, and Mount Olympus isn't a mountain, although I guess technically it could be a mountain on the planet, but that the mountain isn't a mountain, a physical mountain. It's a metaphorical mountain, the metaphorical mountain of evolution, the metaphorical mountain of the Sisyphus complex of pushing the boulder up the hill to become, a god essentially, and then having to redo that again. The metaphorical mountain of Olympus, of being trapped on the mountain of Olympus with the fire of the gods, nailed there, chained there, with, essentially just magic, right? At this point, technology, magic, it's indistinguishable, right? That's what they say. And I just really think it's fascinating because it does open up the universe to the concept of something a little bit more scarier than just a super AI like David taking advantage of a biological weapon and creating aliens, which is scary. Ridley really hit the nail on the head with that. Like, this was years before AI was a real thing, right? He alluded to the idea that a thoughtless, heartless machine would create a biological entity void of any love or emotion, just parasitic in its purest form. Something to be admired by a computer, but to be feared by a human. And that is essentially what the Greek myths are all about. The Greek myths are all about the gods being punished for either attempting to challenge Zeus or trying to give gifts to humans that they're not allowed to have, or changing them in ways that they shouldn't have been changed, unless they're champions of the gods like Perseus or Achilles or Hercules, who take on these heroic forms of gods, even though they're mortal. They're able to harness the powers of the gods, but they don't become gods themselves. They become champions of the gods. So, Achilles is a myth. Perseus is a myth. Medusa is a myth. She's punished by becoming, ugly, or she's punished by becoming a she's a Gorgon. She's one of the Gorgon sisters, but she's punished by snakes and turning men to stone, essentially. I don't know about the ugly thing, but I feel like being turned ugly was the cause. I think it was just her punishment was just she wasn't that any man she looked at would turn to stone, so she could never know love or something like that. Anyway, that's a bit of a weird, but again, like, that kind of mutation, definitely black goo related. Be really interesting if Ridley made a film where, the xenomorph is Xeno, sure, but what if there was a Medusa character in it where, one of these, in the comics, there's something like that. There's the queen of the xenomorphs or something like this, where she's kind of a human hybrid, but that kind of thing where a human being has been mutated by this black goo, and they become demonic in form but still human. The snakes for hair is a really, really powerful myth, right? Because these snakes are not necessarily under Medusa's control either. They're also almost a law unto themselves. But if you look in the ancient Hindu texts, they have the Naga, and the Naga is like protection of Buddha's protection to protect the child, protect Krishna, protect Buddha. The Naga is like a 9-headed snake, and the baby always sits in the Naga, and the snakes protect her. And so it would be really interesting if, there's this expedition, they find some black goo on the planet, one of them gets infected, and her mutations are that, all of these kind of alien tendrils come out of her head and start attacking people, but she's still kind of conscious as a human being almost. That would be so good. Like, I could imagine that as a feature film. Like, they've done Prometheus, they've done Alien Romulus. Why not do Alien Medusa? And like her hair is just like all, like, because they've got like these drawings of what's it called? Head bursters or something like that from Alien Prometheus. And imagine if Medusa is like got these tendrils just growing out of her head. That would be so scary. That would be so scary. And her eyes, her eyes are supposed to glow yellow, right? And then people are supposed to turn to stone. So like, what if the black goo like turns her eyes into this kind of like, I don't know, device, some kind of biomechanical device that sort of beams pathogen into people, turning them directly into statues like Prometheus or something like that, like the mural on the wall, and the snakes are like biting people and they're turning to stone or something like that. That'd be so cool. And it's just her like going crazy and running around a ship or something like that. And, these tendrils in her head biting people and turning to stone. And that would be so cool. That would be such a great film. But yeah, even like the Anunnaki, like having like Enki, Enlil, Anu, Zeus, Prometheus, Epimetheus, having those kinds of technology, like, imagine, you know, they find a derelict and it's one of the Anunnaki spaceships, and it's not the Men of Silver, it's not one of the engineers, it's a real Anunnaki, and he's, golden and draped in gold and shines blue and is like ethereal, almost interdimensional, and then he's, but it's a relic, it's a crashed ship, it's and it's not just that he's been preserved perfectly in a chamber, but it's like his, this ancient Anunnaki world, and the fallout of that means that there's black goo and xenomorphs and crazy biomechanical engineering madness on this planet, and they're discovering a little bit more about how uh, who these ancient beings really were, not just the slaves that made them, not just Prometheus on the wall, but like who these ancient gods really were, like what they were, and why ultimately they stopped visiting Earth, or they stopped interfering in matters, or like years ago, like people had these thoughts, all of these ancient aliens, why did they leave? In the text, it's Zeus or Anu or Krishna or whoever. After the war between these powers, they just leave Earth. They don't come back, and nobody's really sure why. In Prometheus, I believe he's not coming back to destroy humans. I believe that he was the engineer. He was coming to give the black goo to humans again. But that's just my theory, really. But it was a good film. Alien Romulus was a good film. That baby was scary. Like, really tapped into that kind of like, what if my baby is a mutant? What if my baby is the devil? What if my baby is evil? What can I do? How can I cope? You know, who will be there to help? It's crazy. It's crazy, the kinds of thoughts, because it's really female centric is Alien as well. It's one of the reasons why I really love the show, is because it kind of talks about sort of reproduction from the point of more of a fear than this kind of beautiful experience, this kind of real, genuine, nightmarish scenario for a woman where her health is at risk from the moment she's pregnant to the moment she gives birth. Um, and of course, life happens afterwards isn't perfect either. So many things can go badly. We don't always end up living the life we want with the people that we want, or sometimes we're just forced into isolation and being alone, which is crazy. But yeah, I think I think that I think it would be so cool to just make, because I was watching the creation of H.R. Geiger creating the alien, and the face hugger and the chest burster and the original alien model. You know, the suit, the rubber suit, big chap, and all of that, and really phenomenal design work. I really wish I had the mental space to create again. I really would love to be able to do my art. Um, but my mind is just racing with too many thoughts, and my ability is it's not there. It's not as you don't if you don't use it, you lose it. But it's not that I've lost it. It's just that I haven't had a lot of practice to be able to really get any of my creativity out. And I'm genuinely envious of people with studio space that's big enough to create, and expendable income, and not surrounded by negativity and isolation, and positivity and hope. And I think a lot of people live in that kind of darkness. That's another thing with Alien Woman is, people live in this darkness, just having the rug pulled from them every time they think they're going to escape. It's another rug pull. Done my time. It's time to get out. No, rug pull. Sorry, another 5 years on your 20-year contract. You get to the end of that 5 years, another 5 years, another 10 years, and then you die. But I love that planet was so dark and crazy. Like, such a good, well shot film, well made film. Really, really captured that original feeling from the Alien franchise. Dark and foreboding, isolation, scary. Like, even just with their walking down the corridors alone and nothing's really happening. They've just woken up and they're having breakfast and things like this. And you're like, I'm scared because it's just so isolated and so desolate. You know, there's like 6 people on this massive ship. And I imagine how isolating it must feel to just like have to go, all right, well, I'm going to go down to the engineering section, and it takes like half an hour to get there, and you're the only person in this like football field of a space. And you're like working on one section, and the closest person to you is like 5 decks up and on a completely different section of the ship. And the isolation, being alone, being ill, being sick, it ties into all of those really deep rooted fears of human beings. And I'm really glad I saw it as well, like at the cinema, um, and not like on a 4D or an IMAX, just a normal cinema experience. Um, for me, that made the film so much more engaging because when people were scared in the theater, you could almost feel them scared. Like there was a couple of people who like genuinely, like there were jump scares and people were like, you know, genuinely you could feel the palpable kind of fear in the room. And it's not like a 4DX where the seat is shaking and then there's like water spraying in your face and it's kind of a bit manufactured. Like, you're supposed to be scared now. The ship is shaking. Um, it's it's very organic, and when people were scared in the theater, they were like really really scared. Um, so, but yeah, I think that's all I really wanted to say, to be honest. But for me, the interesting part was the kind of connection between all of these different themes. Enki, Enlil, the engineer, first engineer, the second engineer, the men of silver. Those were really interesting themes in the first film that I really loved, because the Men of Silver were intriguing to me when Titanomachy, because Titanomachy kind of tells you that these were completely these were failures. But when you see the engineer, you think, how can these be failures? But then you see the other engineers, and you see that one engineer, he looks just slightly different than everyone else, like a little bit more finished, polished, like a complete version of himself. And then you look at the planet and they're all wrong. Like they all look different, and you're like, that would be a problem, wouldn't it? If you were trying to create this perfect species, which the Men of Gold apparently were perfect. The only reason they died out was because Zeus wiped them out, because anything to do with Kronos had to be wiped out as well. Um, that's important. I mean, imagine if meeting a man of gold. That would be really. I mean, I don't think any existed in. I mean, Zeus was very thorough wiping the men of gold out. But Ridley Scott, Prometheus, Alien, those are his franchises. He could easily just write in something like the Men of Gold and create a real um, artificial kind of man of perfection type. That would be really crazy. Um, yeah, perfect organism. Like the way that David is trying to create a perfect organism, but from the perspective of an imperfect organism, and Kronos creating the Men of Gold in not just the god's image, but to be perfect as worshippers of the gods. So, like, what perfect as far as he wanted them to be for him to be worshipped as a god. So that would be really interesting, because everybody has a different idea about how they would want their subjects to be created, right? Zeus doesn't even like humans. His final punishment on humans is that they be put into toil, um, ultimately like playthings for him to ruin. And he does. He creates nightmarish hells for human beings, playthings for him, toys, mainly because they fail to worship him, and they fail to accept him as a god, and they fail to worship him as a god. So he just punishes them. I'm not even sure if there's an end to that either. I think like the series Chaos, the way they kind of wrap that loop up is by saying he just punishes them endlessly in Hades forever and drinks their life force for eternity, and that's how he becomes immortal. Like, which works for me, because that's exactly the kind of punishment Zeus would give to the species that he has nothing but disdain for. Like, he doesn't like humans. He sees them not just as lesser, but like not even the same kind of level as being like less than, like, consciousness is irrelevant to him. Like, he doesn't really care if they have thoughts and feelings and all of this stuff. All he cares about is being worshipped. And so the fact that they fail to do that, and the fact that he just uses them as an energy source to just drink as water, seems fitting. It seems like a fitting punishment. It's not something Zeus would do. um, I like the series. I like Chaos, the series. I love Jeff Goldblum. It's amazing. Um, but yeah, it's good kind of resurgence for the Greek gods recently, I think, with Chaos and alien Romulus and Prometheus and aliens, and Medusa's in Chaos as well. That was really good. And she's dead, and she's like this kind of like secretary of death or something like that. It's really funny. But yeah, she's like a bureaucrat. She's or management or something like that. Anyway, I think that's it. That's really all I wanted to talk about. My theories about how there's a lot of parallels between each mythology anyway, and how Ridley Scott kind of tried to, and I think in his way, he did a really good job of tying them all together in a really loose enough way that it can be open to interpretation, whereby it's not strictly directly, this is a direct telling of the story of Prometheus. It's just a kind of like blanket of, this is a story of a Prometheus type character. Who is Prometheus? Is it this guy? Is it that guy? Is it this guy? Leaves it open to interpretation, which led to Alien Romulus, which was a fantastic film. So yeah, well, I guess that's it, to be honest. Wasn't too bad.